The girl did everything she could to save her brother, but he coldly shoved her away. "Who said you were allowed to call me brother?" With that, the man turned and walked away without looking back. He left only the little princess trembling in the cold winter night. And she had long since grown used to being treated like this. Her name was Yashtalodi. She was the empire's most noble princess, but her raven black hair made her a symbol of ill omen. In the high priest's prophecy, light and darkness would be born on the same day. The child of light could lead the country to prosperity, but the child of darkness would bring calamity to everyone. Unfortunately, the little princess happened to be born on the day of the prophecy. Because of her black hair, she was naturally regarded as ominous. She was made to live in the most remote palace. She lived a life worse than even the servants. Meanwhile, the illegitimate daughter born on the same day had silver hair, a symbol of royal blood. Therefore, she was treated as the incarnation of light in the prophecy. Naturally, she received everyone's love. And so, the two little princesses grew up in completely different environments. In the blink of an eye, little Telodi was already 12 years old, and by her side, only Loina remained to take care of her. The palace she originally lived in had long since fallen into disrepair. Even her allowance was often withheld by the treasury. Because of a shortage of food, she learned to endure hunger at a very young age. But no matter how hard life was, the girl always wore a satisfied smile on her face. Loina looked at the child teasing butterflies. Her heart was filled with pity. If only that damned prophecy did not exist. Her little princess could have had such a beautiful garden too. But now, all of this belonged to the Princess of Light. The princes had filled it with lilies that bloomed all year round for that illegitimate daughter. And the little princess of pure royal blood could only watch from afar. Even if she wanted to come in and play, she had to do it secretly. The more Loina thought about it, the angrier she became. How could a child as kind as Telodi possibly be the child of calamity from the prophecy? Just as she was lost in thought, a rumbling sound came from the little princess's side. Loina quickly asked if the girl was hungry, but the sensible child only held her stomach and shook her head. The maid knew the little princess wanted to save her own portion of food, but if a child did not eat properly, she would get sick. So she entrusted the little princess to a knight she was close to, and went to the kitchen to prepare food herself. Little Telodi obediently followed behind Ashwin, but she had not expected to run into her brother and sister having afternoon tea in the courtyard. They were both younger sisters, yet her brother favored only the white-haired one, just because black hair represented misfortune. Even though the little princess had once saved his life, the only sister the man acknowledged in his heart was Lily. The eldest prince looked at the girl who was bowing with obvious displeasure. That disgusted look made the little princess's chest ache. That kind of coldness was just like that night a few days ago. She had anxiously waited for him to wake up, and carefully called him brother. She herself was shivering from the cold, yet she had covered her brother with the only blanket. But what she got in return was only, "Don't call me brother. The only one who can call me that is my sister Lily." At that moment, the little princess felt as if her heart had been gouged out alive. The family she had yearned for so desperately treated her like a plague. "I am your sister too," the girl murmured in despair, but she engraved in her heart that she was not allowed to call him brother. So when they met again, little Telodi obediently called him crown prince. The man did not notice the change in how she addressed him. Only the little princess knew how much it hurt inside. But at that moment, Lily, who was beside them, suddenly spoke up. With a smile, she invited her sister to stay and have tea together. Naive little Telodi thought this was concern from family, but she did not expect that the moment the girl spoke, she brought up her pitch black hair. Her arrogant tone carried a faint disdain. This made the little princess feel inferior. Indeed, compared with Lily, she looked far too shabby. Her younger sister's hair was as beautiful as Lily's, and her whole body radiated noble grace, while she herself was still wearing a plain old dress. No matter how one looked at it, she did not seem like a princess at all. And besides, her black hair had always signified misfortune. At that moment, she finally understood why her family disliked her. Lily suddenly noticed the hairpin by the little princess's ear. How could she possibly allow her sister to have something she did not? So the girl arrogantly reached out her hand. "Your hairpin is quite cute. Give it to me." Lily's tone carried an order that could not be disobeyed. Seeing this, the little princess hurriedly stepped back twice. She was so anxious, she was almost about to cry. But her sister directly ignored her resistance. "If others saw this, they might think I was stealing your things. It's just a cheap lily of the valley hairpin, and you're really that unwilling to lend it to me?" Seeing Lily about to snatch it by force, the little princess somehow found a little courage within herself. Loina had once told her that the flower language of Lily of the Valley meant that one would surely become happy. So this was not merely a small hairpin. It also carried her hope for life. The girl said seriously that the hairpin was hers, so she could not lend it. As soon as she finished speaking, Lily's expression had already changed. This was the first time anyone had dared to speak to her like that. The girl angrily swept all the teacups off the table. She was waiting for her brother to stand up for her, right in front of her brother. The little princess was viciously bullied by this scheming younger sister. Scalding tea splashed all over the girl. Little Tailodi frowned tightly in pain, but Lily had no intention of stopping at all. Just as a heavy slap was about to fall, the eldest prince beside them finally stood up. He suddenly grabbed Lily's small hand. "Stop it." The man's voice was gentle, but the willful younger sister did not give her brother any face at all. She forcefully flung away his hand, and tears rolled down like pearls. "Brother, you've gone too far. You're making it sound like I'm the one trying to steal sister's things." Her accusation struck the man's heart again and again. The eldest prince quickly promised to buy her an identical hairpin, but such an answer did not satisfy Lily. Out of the corner of her eye, she glanced at the little princess who was being comforted. Why, when they were both royalty, did this girl still have to come and fight her for her brother? Thinking of this, the girl curled her lips into a sneer. Then she turned and ran out of the courtyard. She was waiting for her brother to leave her sister behind and chase after her. Watching Lily's figure run farther away, the helpless eldest prince could only tell Ashwin to go after her first. He himself stayed behind to continue drinking tea with little Tailodi. Although he did not particularly like this black-haired sister, he was not yet at the point of letting others bully her however they pleased, especially since the girl had saved his life before. Looking at the new dress on his sister, the man unexpectedly felt a trace of satisfaction as an older brother. Yet these were all things the little princess did not know. Just as the girl was hesitating over whether she should take the initiative to leave, she heard the man beside her suddenly speak. "Are you wearing a new dress?" The little princess froze at the question. So was her brother concerned about her? In her heart, she still held onto the last bit of expectation for her family. Yet when she told her brother that the dress had been custom made by Loina, the eldest prince suddenly seemed like a different person. The man slammed his hand heavily on the table. The little princess was so frightened that she immediately began trembling. She subconsciously called out brother, only to be mercilessly interrupted. "I believe I told you before not to call me that. You'd better remember it clearly. Don't think I stopped Lily because I was helping you. You're not worthy of that." The man's face was full of arrogance and disgust, and the little princess cried out in pain. She finally voiced the question that had long been buried in her heart. She too was his sister. Why could he not give her even just a tiny bit of love? But before she could finish speaking, the eldest prince cut her off stiffly. "If I had to choose between the two of you, I would choose Lily without hesitation." With that, the man turned and left without looking back, leaving the little princess behind him in floods of tears. Yet the eldest prince did not know that he had left his spellbook there, and very soon, he would regret everything he had done before. The girl prepared to leave in loneliness, but the moment she lifted her foot, she kicked the spellbook her brother had dropped. Driven by curiosity, the little princess picked up the book, but she had not expected that she could actually understand the spells written in it. They were all in a language she had never seen before. At that thought, the girl's eyes instantly lit up. She had long heard that learning magic required extremely high talent. Someone like her, who could directly decipher spells, was even rarer than 1 in 10,000. If she could learn the magic in the book, would her brother look at her a little more? Would that mean she had the value of being loved? The little princess thought humbly. Then a special line of text suddenly appeared before her eyes. The magic of seeking fate. It seemed that even her brother had failed to understand this part. Curious, the girl read the spell aloud, but she had not expected the magic to actually take effect. A flash of white light appeared. The next second, she was teleported into an unfamiliar room. The pitch-black surroundings sent a chill down one's spine. But just then, heavy footsteps suddenly sounded behind the little princess. She turned around in terror. She saw a black-haired boy in shackles looking down at her. "If you go back right now, I may consider not killing you." There was no expression on the boy's face, but the little princess instinctively felt that this person was very frightening. She just had not expected the magic to fail at such a critical moment. No matter how many times she recited the spell from the book, the surroundings did not change in the slightest. At this, the little princess fell into complete despair. She trembled all over as she waited for death, but unexpectedly, the boy only gently touched the lily of the valley hairpin by her ear. His attitude was so gentle that it was as if everything just now had never happened. Later, little Tailodi learned that this boy's name was Riven. He was not some imprisoned prisoner. On the contrary, he was the master of this castle. It was just that, for some unknown reason, he had no choice but to wear handcuffs. And he was not as frightening as he looked. One could even say that he had a very good temper. He would prepare sumptuous meals for the little princess, and would care about the tiny wounds on her hands. Every time the girl learned a new spell, she would show it to Riven at once, and the boy would patiently watch, then gently praise her for improving. These were all forms of care that little Tailodi had never felt from her family. She had long since regarded Riven as her own brother. If she could, The little princess truly wanted to live here forever, but she had a reason she absolutely had to go back, because Loina was still waiting for her in the palace. So the girl began studying magic even harder. She just had not expected that the little spell she had newly learned would almost cause a disaster. In order to return to her brother's side, the little princess worked until she was almost fainting. She practiced the teleportation spell over and over again, and her body ached faintly from overusing her magic. But even so, she still could not find a way to go back. Seeing the girl's face grow paler day by day, Riven, who had originally not intended to interfere, finally could not bear to watch any longer. He required the little princess to use magic only 50 times a day, and for the next lesson, she had to wait until her body recovered. The little princess protested in a huff, but Riven directly ignored her dissatisfaction. With one raise of his hand, the boy placed the spellbook on the highest shelf, but he never could have imagined that, in order to go home, the little princess would not even care about her own life. That very night, the girls secretly climbed onto the ladder beside the bookshelf. The spellbook was placed very high, and even standing on tiptoe, the little princess was still far from reaching it, but she wanted to go home so badly. So the girl climbed up another rung despite the danger. Just when she thought she was about to get the book, her body suddenly lost its balance. There was only a loud crash. The little princess fell heavily from the bookshelf. This time, her plan to steal the book had failed, and it also woke Riven next door. The girl waited aggrievedly for the boy's punishment, but unexpectedly, the first thing he cared about was her injury. Riven gently lifted her bangs. The instant the gauze touched the wound, the little princess let out a soft whimper of pain, and her pretty little face scrunched up into a ball. Seeing this scene, the boy's heart felt as if it had been fiercely stabbed. He made his movements even gentler, yet he could not help blaming himself inside. If he had not hidden the book away, this child would not have been hurt at all. But on the matter of limiting her practice, he still would not compromise, because the backlash caused by exhausting one's magic power was irreversible. When severe, it could even endanger one's life. During these days, Riven had long since regarded little Taelodi as his own younger sister. As an older brother, how could he bear to watch his family risk her life? In the days that followed, little Taelodi kept learning magic under Riven's guidance, although she did not practice many times. With an expert's guidance, however, her progress was still extremely fast. On this day, just like usual, the little princess learned another new spell. Look. She excitedly wanted to show it to her brother, but the moment she recited the spell, the bookshelf beside her lost control and toppled toward her. The moment he saw this, Riven's heart nearly stopped for a beat. He instinctively lunged forward. Subconsciously, he used his back to block the heavy bookshelf. Cold sweat slid down the boy's cheeks, but he completely ignored the sharp pain in his body and worriedly asked the girl whether she had been hurt. Seeing his younger sister obediently shake her head, the heart he had been holding up finally settled. Riven pretended that he was not injured, but little Taelodi's eyes reddened because of this. At last, she had family who would dote on her and love her. Meanwhile, on the other side, the biased white-haired older brother only now realized that his younger sister was missing. The older brother had given all his tenderness to that scheming green tea younger sister, and the little princess who truly cared about him, no one even noticed when she went missing. Back then, it was little Taelodi who saved the gravely wounded crown prince. She carefully bandaged his wounds. She even covered her brother with the only blanket she had. After finishing everything, the girl was filthy all over because she was afraid her brother would dislike her. The tiny girl could only curl up on the ground all alone. The cold night wind made the little princess tremble, but in her heart, she felt sweet. She was finally no longer that pitiful child with no family. However, just as the little princess had fallen asleep, the crown prince woke from his unconsciousness. The wounds on his body had already been properly treated. Only then did he notice a tiny little figure curled up beside his hand. The man subconsciously wanted to pat his little sister on the head, but in the end, he held himself back. According to the high priest's prophecy, darkness would one day swallow the light, and the only solution was to stay away. The crown prince cast a complicated glance at his sister's black hair, then turned around and left coldly. But what he had not expected was that the two of them would meet again the very next day. The little princess followed behind the maid stiffly. She couldn't help it. On her timid little face still hung a fawning smile. That shrinking, timid appearance made the crown prince inexplicably irritable. Thank you for what happened last night, but I also have to thank you for managing to pull out a torn old blanket from all those things and cover me with it. Go on, tell me. What reward do you want? The man's arrogant attitude was no different from charity, and the little princess's eyes reddened in grievance. How she wanted to tell her brother that that blanket was already the best thing she could find. But in the end, the little princess only voiced her wish. She told her brother that she wanted a few beautiful new dresses. Of course, All of these were for Loina. She did not want even one for herself. Hearing this answer, the crown prince had not expected such a wish from his sister, so he wanted to give her a gift. So he not only had dresses made for Loina, he also casually had a few custom made for his sister. He treated it as repayment for the girl taking care of him that night. That way, he could continue ignoring the sister with a clear conscience. It was just that the crown prince had not expected that the maid would take credit for what he had done. So when he heard his sister say that was why he became so angry. He planned to go find that maid and confront her face to face. Unexpectedly, just as he left the small garden, he ran into her. "Did you like the dresses I gave you?" Before Loina could even react, the crown prince aggressively questioned her about why she had lied. Loina was so frightened that her whole body trembled. But when she thought of all the grievances the little princess had suffered over the years, she suddenly was no longer afraid. "Your Highness, you truly are a despicable man. You are only slightly kind to people when you yourself are in a good mood. When you are unhappy, you simply cast them aside. In your eyes, our princess is not even 1/10,000th as important as Princess Lily. But if that is the case, why give her that tiny, insignificant bit of hope? Do you know how painful it is when a sincere heart is trampled over and over again?" Loina's words were like sharp blades stabbing into the crown prince's heart. Outrageous, humiliated, and enraged, he wanted to retort, but he could not say a single word. He remembered the joy on his sister's face when she called him brother. Then he remembered the despair on her tear-streaked face when she was abandoned. Was he really as terrible as Loina said? The more the man thought, the more his heart hurt. In the end, he fled in a sorry state. That scheming green tea younger sister openly bullied the little princess. Afterward, she even ran to their imperial father and falsely accused the victim first. The girl looked at the man seated in the place of honor with reddened eyes. Her tearful, delicate appearance made it seem as if she had suffered an enormous injustice. She said pitifully that she had only wanted to take a look at her sister's hairpin. She had not expected her sister to get angry. Lily put on a well-behaved look of "I don't blame big sister." With just one sentence, she won everyone present's favor. For a time, rumors spread all through the palace that the ill-omened imperial princess had bullied the Princess of Light. Many people said Princess Telodi had no upbringing. Some even said that the divine prophecy was about to come true. Only by executing the little princess could the people's hearts be stabilized. Before long, these words also reached the second prince's ears. The young man's eyes suddenly darkened. This was completely different from the timid little girl in his memory. Noah vaguely remembered that their first meeting had been on a winter afternoon. Little Telodi had been huddled on the steps, sadly tugging at her own hair. She was even muttering that it was all because she was too dirty that people disliked her. The second prince's gaze was unconsciously drawn over. Just by looking at her hair, he had already recognized that this child was the darkness from the high priest's prophecy. But as an imperial princess, she was dressed far too poorly. The little princess looked thin and small. She did not look dangerous at all like the prophecy had said. Thinking this, the second prince walked over against the light. Seeing the girl shivering from the cold, he was inexplicably compelled to take off his cloak. The sudden warmth instantly made the little princess's eyes turn red. But this cloak was truly far too precious. She wanted her brother to quickly take it back. But the second prince gently shook his head. He thoughtfully adjusted the collar for his little sister. "Just think of this as concern from your family." The young man had many cloaks like this, but the little princess's expression at the time was as if she had found a treasure. So how could such a sensible child do something like snatch another person's belongings? The second prince prepared to find a chance to ask his elder brother. Meanwhile, the crown prince had also heard the same rumor. His heart wavered even more, but according to the high priest's prophecy, approaching darkness would bring disaster. He was unwilling to give up the throne that was almost within his grasp. Just as he was struggling greatly, hurried knocking sounded outside the study. Seeing that the person who came was Knight Ashwin, the crown prince impatiently waved his hand. But in the next second, he heard news that shocked him beyond measure. "Her Highness Telodi has gone missing." The man's heart suddenly clenched. A powerful sense of unease instantly surged into his heart, and he suddenly regretted it. The man frantically rummaged through the magic books in the drawer. He vaguely remembered that one of them recorded a locating spell, but after searching for a long time, there was still no sign of that book. At that moment, the crown prince completely panicked. He crazily ordered people to search for the missing little princess. As for himself, he collapsed weakly into the chair. He had never imagined that one day his sister would completely disappear from his world, without even giving him a chance to regret it. The man painfully recalled the scene from a few days earlier. He had clearly seen Lily snatch the little princess's hairpin, but as her older brother, he had done nothing. If he really had to choose one of the two, he had even said to his sister that he would choose Lily without the slightest hesitation. If only he had turned back and looked once at that time, he would have noticed the girl's tears of despair. Actually, it was not that the crown prince did not love his sister. It was just that his childhood experiences had blinded his eyes. His mother was a paranoid madwoman. From childhood, She had demanded that he become the perfect heir. Verbal abuse and whipping were nothing more than everyday occurrences. He could only treat inheriting the throne as his sole goal. Even so, the crown prince still deeply loved this harsh woman. But not long afterward, his mother died. And because of that, the young him became dispirited. Until the boy met Lily for the first time, that child who was as beautiful as a lily flower. The tiny girl softly called him brother. In an instant, the high walls around the crown prince's heart were shattered. Originally, he had not believed at all that there was any such thing as divine prophecy. But at that moment, he regarded his white-haired younger sister as a deity, though he did not know why. In his memory, Lily's bright and beautiful little face gradually became blurred. Replacing it instead was the smile on little Tylodi's face. At this very moment, it felt as if the crown prince's chest had been torn open alive. He clearly did care about the little princess. But why did he always have to hurt her again and again? If heaven could give him one more chance, he would definitely treat this sister well. Thinking this, the man got up and went to the little princess's side palace. The high priest had repeatedly warned him not to go there, but he could no longer care about so much. Compared with his sister's safety, what did the position of crown prince even matter? But what he had not expected was that the empress's palace, where his sister lived, was so dilapidated, and he was also about to learn those truths that would leave him in endless regret. The man walked alone toward the little princess's palace, but the deeper he went, the heavier his heart became. The desolate courtyard seemed to wordlessly accuse his favoritism, and after stepping into the inner hall, he was even more shocked by everything before his eyes. The wooden beams looked as if they might collapse the next second. In such a vast palace, he could not even find a single candle for lighting. This was not a place fit for human habitation at all. Yet his sister had lived in such an environment for 10 years. For a moment, the man's heart was filled with mixed emotions. He asked Loina to take him to see the little princess's room. However, he had barely stepped onto the stairs when the crown prince nearly missed his footing. Lowering his head, he finally noticed the broken-down staircase under his feet. The moment he thought that the one who might have been hurt was his sister, his heart trembled violently again. But Loina seemed as if she had long since grown used to all of this. Helplessly, she said that she also knew the stairs were dangerous, but they simply had no extra money for repairs. On the palace side, they often withheld the little princess's allowance, so even filling their stomachs was already very difficult for them. The winters here had always been very cold, but even when her hands were covered with sores from the freezing cold, that child had never complained, nor had she ever indulged in wild hopes. At this point, Loina's gaze suddenly softened. Her Highness always fantasized that one day, her family would come to take her back. So no matter how hard life was, she still remained like a little son. Seeing the way she looked so full of hope, I truly could not bear to shatter her dream with my own hands. Like blade after blade, Loina mercilessly laid bare the truths the crown prince did not dare face. The man could no longer imagine what could feel worse than this moment. So was he, as a brother, really this terrible? It was he who had chosen Lily over and over again. And it was also he who had pushed his sister farther and farther away again and again. While the crown prince was lost in wild thoughts, the group had already arrived at the door of the room. Even from far away, the man could smell the pungent odor of mold. And after pushing open the door, the scene inside was even worse. The dark and damp environment was not even as good as a servant's woodshed. And in the wardrobe, there were only old and filthy clothes left. The man suddenly realized something. In pain, he covered his eyes and let the tears keep sliding down. His sister had covered him with the cleanest blanket she had, and he, with the cruelest words, had viciously wounded that heart which was already shattered. At the thought of the girl's despairing eyes, the crown prince wished he could slap himself to death. He was the worst brother in the world. Yet from the corner of his eye, he unintentionally caught sight of that cloak in the wardrobe. Its luxurious style was utterly out of place with this dilapidated room. It was as if the crown prince had grabbed the last life-saving straw. Instinctively, he felt that this garment was related to his sister's disappearance. Unfortunately, Loina told him that this had been given to the little princess by the second prince before his death. The girl could not bear to wear it, so she had always kept it folded neatly, refusing to put it on. Whenever she missed her family, she would take it out and hold it for a while, but she did not dare hold it for too long either. She was afraid of damaging this only gift she had. Loina's voice was choked with sobs. She had once begged the little princess not to keep loving those family members anymore. They were not worth it, but at that time, the girl had only smiled and gently shaken her head. Her eyes were full of helplessness. I also wish I could stop liking them, but that is not something I can do just because I wish it. After hearing Loina's words, the crown prince was already in floods of tears. Like a trapped beast, he howled helplessly in the darkness. If heaven would give him one more chance, he would definitely spend the rest of his life making up for these more than 10 years of neglect. Unfortunately, All the clues had gone cold. Now the only person who might possibly have taken away the little princess was the assassin who had appeared a few days earlier. That day, it was the high priest who had come to find him on his own initiative. He had even spoken with absolute certainty, saying that a dangerous person was lurking by the side of the Princess of Light. So the crown prince did not think twice before rushing to Lily's bedchamber. And just as the high priest had predicted, the moment he entered, he saw a man wrapped all over in a black robe, chanting an attack spell. At that critical moment, the crown prince instinctively stepped in front of his younger sister. The sharp blade of light pierced straight through his waist and abdomen. But even so, he was still raising a magical barrier for Lily. Later, that man fled toward the little princess's side palace, and he pursued him all the way to this area. Unfortunately, he failed to catch the assassin and instead fainted himself from excessive blood loss. Thinking of this, the crown prince's heart ached sharply once again. He could be injured and bleed for Lily, yet he had left the little princess, who had taken care of him all night, behind on the spot. He clearly had two younger sisters, but because of his own favoritism, he had personally lost one of them. The crown prince's hands began to tremble uncontrollably. In fact, he had long since placed little Taylody in a position just as important as Lily, but because of that damned bit of pride, he kept hurting the girl's feelings again and again. The man painfully grabbed his own hair. He did not dare think about those details from the past, but everything before his eyes was rudely reminding him just how much of a failure he had been as an older brother. The crown prince deceived himself by thinking that if he had reached out his hand that day, even just once, perhaps his sister would not have left in disappointment. Perhaps she would have forgiven him. It wasn't that he had not seen the tattered clothes on his sister. It wasn't that he had not seen her face covered in tears. He had merely pretended not to see. The man's nails dug deeply into his flesh, but this bit of pain was nothing compared with the pain in his heart. That child had gone hungry while taking care of him all night. Yet all he had given his sister was charity. He had even forbidden the girl from calling him brother. Call me crown prince. He had even forbidden the girl from calling him brother. Yet that child still carefully held on to the few old clothes they had given her. The crown prince could no longer tell whether what he felt at this moment was heartbreak or despair. He silently turned around. Now the only hope left was to find the magic book as soon as possible. Even if his sister still refused to forgive him after returning, he would definitely bring her back. Meanwhile, the crown prince was still searching the world over for his sister. And in a distant eastern kingdom, the little princess had already begun a sweet life with her new older brother. Riven gave little Taylody a magical garden blooming with lilies of the valley. The shy little flowers drooped their heads, as if softly telling the little princess in the language of flowers that she must be happy. It was just that this familiar scene was far too similar, and in an instant, it made the girl's nose sting with tears. More than once, she had envied the lily garden lily hat. She had also fantasized countless times that her brothers could give her one too. Unfortunately, dreams were dreams after all, and they still shattered. So it turned out that it was not that she was unworthy of having one. It was simply that her family had never loved her. She subconsciously touched the hairpin by her ear, but to her surprise, this gift, which was extremely important to her, was gone. The girl hurriedly looked around for it, but Riven gently patted her shoulder. He comforted the little princess and told her to eat something first. Then he took out the sandwiches he had prepared in advance from the basket. During this period, the young man had already figured out the girl's tastes, and he was also very willing to take care of the little princess's daily life like a personal butler. Come to think of it, if his younger sister were still alive now, she would be about the same age as the girl. The young man's eyes, as he looked at little Taylody, were full of remembrance. Just then, the little princess suddenly spoke. She asked curiously whether Riven's hands could be freed, seeing how inconvenient it was for her brother to move. The girl really wanted to use magic to help him. Compared with the crown prince's cold words, this new older brother had never once despised her ominous black hair. He even protected her gently, like a knight. So in just a few short days, Riven's place in little Tylody's heart had already far surpassed that of those two heartless brothers. Because of this, the girl truly wanted to do something for the young man from the bottom of her heart. She touched her brother's wrist with concern. The rough shackles had long since rubbed that place raw with wounds. If only she could help her brother. Thinking of this, the little princess suddenly had a flash of inspiration. Maybe the book contained magic to open the shackles. And she also wanted to use this opportunity to try the spell to go home one more time. So the little princess gently tugged at her brother's sleeve. With an obedient look on her face, she said she was going to look in the book for a way to unlock them. But before she could turn around, Riven had already grabbed her wrist. A trace of slyness flashed in the young man's eyes. The little princess instantly felt as if her thoughts had been seen through. Yet before she could run away, Riven behind her had already spoken with a smile. "You're not trying to fool me, are you?" Hearing this, the girl stammered and shook her head, but the young man had already smiled until his eyes curved. Only then did the little princess realize that she had been teased. But joking aside, Riven once again seriously emphasized the importance of rest. Overusing magic was no different from overdrawing one's life. He could understand the girl's desire to go home, but there was no way he would hand over that magic book. After saying that, the young man even blinked innocently. That irritating look of his made the little princess quite angry, seeing the girl's lively expression. Riven also revealed a gratified smile. This child was already much livelier than when she had first arrived. It seemed that his efforts had not been in vain. The next second, the young man raised his hand and ruffled his younger sister's long hair. Then he helplessly said that for the time being he did not want to remove the handcuffs, because if he did, some people would be afraid. He casually curled the corner of his mouth. Anyway, to him, wearing shackles for a lifetime was not impossible. Riven said it lightly, but the little princess's heart suddenly clenched tight, and she loudly told Riven that he could not. He could not hide away and live like that. She knew what kind of despair it was to be feared by everyone, so she could not let her brother continue sinking into the mire. After spending these days together, she had already regarded Riven as her most important family. That was why she could not bear to see the young man tortured by the shackles. The little princess looked at him with heartache. Her wet eyes looked as if she would cry the next second. This time, it was Riven who was at a loss instead. He could only compromise and promise his younger sister that he would definitely not hide away and live. And sooner or later, his handcuffs would be removed. Only after hearing this did the little princess finally feel completely relieved. She asked curiously whether Riven also liked lilies of the valley, but the young man had already turned away in loneliness. A bitter smile curled at the corner of his mouth, and then he said lightly, "My former family liked them." From the little princess's voice, she could not hear too much emotion, yet she could feel an almost inescapable despair in it. It was just like every time she had wanted to get close to the crown prince, even though she knew that getting close to him was no different from a moth flying into a flame. Even covered in wounds, she still rushed toward him without hesitation. She could not stop loving her family, just as Loina had taught her. Love was never supposed to ask for anything in return. Over the next few days, the little princess pestered him every day to see that magic book. Unable to withstand his younger sister's repeated soft pleading, Riven finally returned the magic book to the girl. But no matter what, the young man had never expected that his younger sister would find a way back so quickly. It was a bright and beautiful afternoon. The little princess was quietly sitting in the courtyard reading. The breeze gently lifted the girl's long hair, yet she was reading with unusual concentration because she had found a magical spell. According to the description, as long as the magic circle was completed, one could immediately be teleported to the side of the person who missed them. The little princess could not wait to give it a try. She firmly believed that Loina must still be thinking about her. At that moment, however, Riven suddenly appeared. "You're working hard." A trace of admiration flashed through the young man's eyes, and the little princess said playfully that she just did not want to trouble him anymore. She had already found a way to go back. After saying that, the girl began reciting an incantation on her own. Under Riven's shocked gaze, a strange portal appeared out of thin air. The little princess was also preparing to leave with the help of magic. She could not bear to part with Riven, this handsome and gentle older brother, but in the end, Loina was the family member who had taken care of her for a full 10 years. Thinking of this, the girl activated the spell to go home, but she had not expected that Riven, who had always indulged her in everything, would disregard the danger and hug her tightly. No matter how the little princess struggled, the young man refused to let go. And, of course, he had his own reasons for doing so. Most teleportation magic came with danger, and with his younger sister's weak body, she simply could not withstand it at all. Under such circumstances, the slightest carelessness could cause her to be reduced to ashes. So, no matter what, Riven would not let his younger sister take such a risk. Unfortunately, the little princess did not understand her brother's intentions at all. She only knew that Loina was still waiting for her. The girl desperately reached toward the portal before her. Yet in the next second, she felt a sharp pain in her chest. It was as if someone had fiercely poked her there. In the blink of an eye, that magic gate disappeared. Watching Loina's gradually shrinking figure, a wave of overwhelming despair instantly surged up in the little princess's heart. If this attempt failed, perhaps there would never be another chance. Thinking of this, she ignored all attempts to stop her and cast magic again. In an instant, stretches of grass spread rapidly from beneath her feet like melting snow, and both she and Riven were swept into a gorgeous space where she saw Loina's phantom. It was standing right in front of her, and she had clearly been only a little bit away from going home. "Can you hear me?" Thinking of this, the girl trembled as she lunged toward that phantom, but behind her, Riven shouted loudly. Judging from the current situation, the entire spell was already on the verge of going out of control.
His younger sister might die.
But the little princess could not listen to a single word of it. She wanted so badly to return to Loena's side. Even though the pain caused by the magical backlash made her whole body tremble, she still struggled forward step by step toward that phantom. Even if she had to crawl, she would crawl back to Loena's side. Yet in the next second, a wave of intense dizziness suddenly swept through her brain. In an instant, the world seemed to darken. The unguarded little princess fell heavily just like that, but the pain she had expected never came. Riven caught her steadily. The young man carefully gathered the girl into his arms. Looking at his younger sister's unfocused eyes, his heart was left with nothing but deep self-blame. If he had not stopped her, perhaps the girl would not have suffered such serious internal injuries. But he also had hardships he could not speak of. Riven let out a bitter sigh, and his expression gradually softened as well. After spending these days together, he had already grown fond of this optimistic and cheerful child. He still remembered when she had first arrived. Because she lacked a sense of security, she always liked to curl up alone in a corner. She also always ate very little of the food prepared for her, as if enduring hunger had long since become her instinct. And yet she was so kind. He had only given her a little concern in passing. Yet that child had been so moved that she cried tears of gratitude. All these strange behaviors made Riven feel that this sensible child seemed never to have truly been treated kindly by anyone. In little Taelodi, Riven could always see his former self. That was why he hoped even more that the girl could obtain happiness. Because of her brother's obstruction, the little princess suffered magical backlash and fell unconscious. At this moment, she was lying weakly on the bed. Her pale little face looked as if she might stop breathing the next second. Riven stayed by her side, taking care of her with heartache. But because the girl's injuries were too severe, she had still not woken up for a long time. At this moment, she was having a long, beautiful dream. In the dream, many people were desperately looking for her.
Luna,
Knight Ashwin, and even the crown prince. They were all worried about her. At the end of the dream, her brother seemed to cry. That kind of sadness was like having lost the most important treasure. So, were those really tears her brother had shed for her? In the next second, the little princess woke from the dream. But where was there any sorrowful crown prince before her eyes? By her bedside, there was only Riven, carefully taking care of her. At this moment, the girl's heart, once full of expectation, instantly sank. She should have understood it long ago. The crown prince would not miss her, with considerate Lily by his side. Her brother probably still did not even know that he had lost her. The little princess hid the disappointment in her eyes with a bitter smile. Then she gently nestled into Riven's arms. Seeing that the little princess, who had been unconscious for days, had finally awakened, how could the young man still care about maintaining the elegance of a noble gentleman as usual? He gave his younger sister a long, nagging lecture. Only after confirming that she was not in serious danger did Riven's hanging heart finally settle. He gently told the little princess that tomorrow's breakfast would include her favorite raspberry sandwich, so tonight she absolutely had to rest well. After saying that, Riven prepared to turn off the light and leave, but before he could turn around, his younger sister gently tugged at his sleeve. The little princess pitifully raised her little face, and only after quite a while did she stammer out a plea. "Could you stay with me a little longer?" Before Riven could answer, the girl had already started crying first. She solemnly declared that she absolutely would not be a bother. Even 1 minute would be fine. She was afraid of the dark if she slept alone. After saying this, the little princess realized that she had said the wrong thing. After making so many excessive requests, she would probably be hated, right? She hurriedly apologized to her brother. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have been willful. Please, don't leave me behind." By the end of it, the little princess herself no longer even knew what she was saying. She was only afraid that Riven would leave as heartlessly as the crown prince had. Just as the girl was letting her thoughts run wild, the young man had already sat back down by the bed, and he spoke in a muffled voice. "Even staying with you until you fall asleep is fine. But who on earth told you that needing someone to stay with you means you're throwing a tantrum?" Riven's voice was thick with barely restrained anger, but the girl was not afraid at all. She even felt that the way Riven looked when he was angry was very similar to Loena. That was the kind of emotion only family members who truly cared about her would reveal. At that thought, the little princess suddenly relaxed. So she gently shook her head. No one had ever told her that. But only loved children have the right to be willful, and the unloved one, once she cries or makes a fuss, will lose everything. After saying that, the girl bitterly touched her black hair. From the moment she was born, she was destined not to be the favored child. She also wanted to have a harbor where she could take shelter from the storm. The girl helplessly tugged at her black hair. Even her blood-related family could not tolerate her, let alone Riven, whom she had only known for a few days. Maybe she really was just as the prophecy said, born with misfortune. Otherwise, why was it always her who was abandoned every time? At last, The little princess spoke the deepest secret hidden in her heart, but the boy's eyes gradually turned red. The wounds of their childhood were unexpectedly so similar. Both of them were left covered in scars by the family they loved most. That was why he had been so stubborn and unwilling to let the little princess leave. It was Riven who had secretly taken his sister's hairpin, and it was also he who had forcibly endured the backlash and interrupted the girl's magic. The boy had tried every possible way just to keep his sister by his side, but now it seemed that the little princess was determined to go back. So, was he going to be abandoned once again? At this moment, Riven could no longer care about maintaining his cold and aloof appearance. He almost pleaded as he asked his sister whether she could stay a few more days, but the little princess could only shake her head helplessly. She told Riven that if she stayed like this any longer, she was afraid Loina would do something foolish, and she also wanted to make one final effort, although she had already warned herself again and again not to harbor any illusions about her family anymore. The family affection she had longed for over more than 10 years was not something she could simply let go of just because she said so. After hearing his sister's words, Riven could only let out a helpless sigh. Sure enough, he still had absolutely no way to deal with the little princess. The boy gently lifted his sister's little hand. He stuffed the lily of the valley hairpin, which symbolized happiness, back into the girl's hand. Not everyone in this world will love you, so there is no need for you to love everyone either. Look, haven't the people who truly love you already appeared? The tenderness in the boy's eyes was almost overflowing. He softly said he was sorry. He should not have selfishly trapped the girl by his side. But before he could finish speaking, the little princess suddenly threw herself into his arms. The kind-hearted girl did not suspect in the slightest that it was her brother who had taken her hairpin. Listening to her say thank you over and over again, Riven only felt that his own despicableness had nowhere to hide. At that moment, he became even more determined to send his sister home. So after the little princess fell asleep, Riven quietly placed the magic book back onto the bookshelf. He deliberately put the book on the lower shelf, but in his heart, he still could not help praying that the girl would discover it a little later. Unfortunately, the boy's wish was destined to fail. The moment the little princess woke up, she saw the magic book on the shelf. He had steeled his heart and hurt the younger sister he loved most. So heaven had also taken back his right to be her brother. At this very moment, the eldest prince was searching for the little princess like a madman. The knights he sent out were replaced batch after batch, but all they brought back was bad news. It was as if his little sister had vanished from the face of the earth. There was not even the slightest trace left behind. The man irritably slammed the documents hard onto the desk. He had long since grown sick of hearing the words, "We've already done everything we could. We've already done everything we could." The moment he thought that his sister might be out there, starving and freezing, the eldest prince's heart clenched sharply. In a rage, he rebuked the knights for their incompetence, but as he cursed them, he painfully grabbed and tugged at his own hair. In the final analysis, all the fault lay with him. It was because he had utterly failed as her brother. Now, every single corner of the palace had already been searched through by him once. The only hope could now be placed on the second prince, whose magic was outstanding. Although the relationship between the brothers was not harmonious, for the sake of finding his sister, the eldest prince still gritted his teeth and summoned his younger brother. At this moment, he looked exactly like a gambler willing to pay any price. As long as he could find his sister, he was willing to give anything. Meanwhile, the little princess had just recovered from the magical backlash. She weakly moved her stiff body. Her big eyes, filled with anticipation, anxiously searched for that gentle boy. Unfortunately, Riven seemed to have already left. A trace of disappointment flashed through the girl's eyes. However, at that moment, she noticed something. Could it be that brother had deliberately placed this here? At that thought, the little princess laboriously rose onto her tiptoes. Unfortunately, the book was still placed too high. No matter how hard the girl tried, she simply could not reach it. After trying several times in a row, the little princess sat back down on the bed in frustration. Her little face, soft and puffy like a milk bun, was puffed up with anger as she muttered in dissatisfaction. Brother couldn't have done it on purpose, could he? Yet at just that moment, a sudden flash of inspiration struck her little head. During this period, she had also learned quite a few practical everyday spells. Now, they just happened to come in handy. At that thought, the girl softly recited a summoning spell. Unexpectedly, the book on the shelf steadily fell right into her arms. This belonged to the eldest prince. The little princess quickly wiped away the dust on it with her sleeve. She carefully flipped to the spell that could send her home. But at that very moment, the girl suddenly hesitated. On one side was Loina, who took care of her like a mother, and on the other side was Riven, who treasured her like a precious jewel. Both sides were family she could not bear to part with, but in the end, the little princess still chose to go home. The girl devoutly recited the spell from the book. Yet this time, the portal did not appear. Her magic had failed. Brother finally realized that the little princess who had always been disliked was the younger sister who truly cared about him. And Lily, whom he had loved for 10 years, had never once cared whether he lived or died. But he had been as blind as if he could not see. Again and again, With his own hands, he had hurt that heart that was already shattered. If only everything could start over, then perhaps his heart would not hurt as much as it did now. But now, he could only place his final hope on the second prince, hoping to find some clue to his sister. So, for the first time, the eldest prince lowered his proud head. He humbly begged Noah to help him. That defeated look made him seem like a gambler who had lost everything. Yet in the end, all efforts were futile. Even the most powerful search spell could not find the slightest trace of the little princess. Watching the magical glow gradually dissipate, the hope in the eldest prince's eyes also dimmed little by little. Meanwhile, the little princess, anxious to return home, kept encountering one magical failure after another. She stared at her own hands in frustration. Where exactly had the problem come from? After trying again and again many times, the girl finally found the hidden reason. The summoning spell just now had already exhausted the little magic power she had in her body. Now, if she wanted to leave, she could only obediently lie back in bed and rest first. She could not help but let out a soft sigh. She had spent a long time preparing herself mentally before she was finally willing to go back. Otherwise, she truly could not rest easy leaving Riven here all alone. She always felt that beneath the boy's powerful exterior was hidden a heart shattered into pieces. It was just a pity that now she still had reasons why she absolutely had to go back. The little princess decided that after returning home and letting them know she was safe, she would find a chance to come back again. Because deep in her heart, she had long since accepted by default that Riven was her brother, and Riven knew none of this. He had already prepared himself to let go, no matter how unbearably reluctant he was to part with the little princess in the depths of his heart. He could not, like some villain, keep the girl trapped by his side for her whole life. To love someone is to fulfill her happiness, and what Riven had to do was help the little princess realize all her wishes. As he thought about it, the boy's eyes grew so sore and bitter that they ached, but he still tried hard to keep a smile on his face. By now, that child should already have returned to her family's side, shouldn't she? He hoped she would remember his advice. Some people are not worth loving. You must first learn to love yourself before loving others. At that thought, Riven lowered his head and looked at his shackles. It was also time for him to let go of the past and face his life head-on. So the male lead, gentle and strong, had once had a past too painful to look back on. That was why he had voluntarily put on shackles, to seal off his own heart. As a child, Riven had also once had a happy and complete family. His father was the most renowned lord in the empire, and as the heir, he had displayed astonishing magical talent from a young age. The people all adored this powerful and well-behaved child. That was why they jokingly called him the ace of the Fulman region. For a time, pride blinded the boy's eyes, and tragedy also quietly brewed in the shadows. At this time, Riven had long since been so overwhelmed by endless praise that it had gone to his head. He began trying all kinds of dangerous forbidden magic, yet during one accidental mistake, the out-of-control spell brutally broke his younger brother's legs. Even though after the incident, his parents did not blame him, the seed of guilt had already taken root and sprouted in the boy's heart. Between apologizing and running away, he chose the latter, because he feared that this evil power would hurt the family he loved most once again. Riven stubbornly sealed himself off completely. He thought that as long as he stayed away, no more accidents would happen. If the story had ended here, they should still have remained a happy family of 4. However, for some unknown reason, rumors that extermination magic had appeared in the world began spreading rapidly among the people. In the end, they also reached the emperor's ears. The crazed emperor wanted to obtain this evil power, so he summoned the Fulman father and son. Again and again, father instructed Riven. No matter what happened, he absolutely must not admit it. But once they reached the palace hall, the development of events far exceeded his imagination. The moment they stepped onto the red carpet, they were surrounded by fully armed guards. And what shocked him even more was that his mother and younger brother were here too. At this moment, Riven completely understood. This was a trap prepared especially for him. The next second, the Emperor stood before Riven. I have something to confirm. I hear that Fulman's ace can use extermination magic. That whisper-like murmur was even more terrifying than the curse of an evil spirit. The boy could only lower his head, not daring to answer. It was not that he did not want to admit it, but the moment he admitted it, father would bear the charge of treason. Yet in the end, Riven had still underestimated the ugliness of human nature. Before he could even react, the Emperor's blade had already viciously stabbed into his father's body. And at the same time, painful screams also came from where his mother and younger brother were. Hearing his family's flesh being torn apart little by little, their bones being broken inch by inch, Riven could no longer endure such torment. In despair, he recited the spell. The next second, a terrifying magic array shrouded everyone's heads like a descending evil specter. Yet, at this critical moment, his dying father suddenly grabbed his son's sleeve. Using the very last of his strength, he stopped Riven's attack. She was the true princess, gentle and kind. Yet, because of her black hair, she was bullied by the arrogant and manipulative fake imperial princess, wearing the shabbiest dress. When they first met, Riven even mistook little Teloti for a balloon that had accidentally drifted into the forbidden area. But only later did he learn that the one he had picked up was actually the little princess of an enemy country. And she, just like him, possessed world-shocking magical talent. Looking at the girl's eyes, full of longing for knowledge, Riven seemed to see his former self from those years, equally gifted beyond compare, equally spirited and high-spirited, and likewise so innocent that it made one's heart ache. This made Riven subconsciously treat little Teloti as his own younger sister. He placed all the guilt he had carried for his family over these years onto the little princess, but even so, he still could not forgive the person he had once been. If back then he had hardened his heart and killed that shameless emperor, would his family perhaps not have died so miserably in agony? But in this world, there is ultimately no medicine for regret. Under his father's restraint, Riven gave up the attack, but his mercy was rewarded only with the emperor's ever more excessive cruelty. In the end, kindness still lost to vicious malice. Watching his loved ones fall one by one into pools of blood, tears covered the boy's cheeks. But no matter how hoarsely he cried out his apologies, those departed family members could never hear him again. Yet all of this was still not the end. After committing every possible evil deed, the despicable royal family even framed the Duke's death on Riven. Overnight, that spirited young boy lost everything. He also went from being Fulman's ace, praised by everyone, to becoming a madman reviled by all. The feeling of falling from heaven into hell was nothing more than this. Riven, not yet even 12 years old, was forced to wear shackles weighing hundreds of pounds. He was imprisoned in a pitch-dark basement with no light of day, and this imprisonment lasted for a full 3 years. Every single day and night of those 3 years, he tossed and turned in sleepless, guilt-ridden nightmares, until he met little Teloti. This innocent and kind girl stumbled by chance into his life. Like a warm little sun, she slowly, little by little, soothed the scars in his heart. Riven truly treated the little princess as his own younger sister. So how could he bear to let the one he treasured most leave his side? But since the girl had a reason she had to go back, then this time, he would be the one to go find her. The young man gently curled his lips into a smile. They would definitely meet again. Meanwhile, the little princess had almost finished resting as well. She once again recited the spell to return home. The surging airflow instantly rose and churned from beneath her feet. The next second, the girl was teleported to another place. She warily looked around, but did not see Loina anywhere. Instead, a strange white-haired man slowly sat up on the bed. So the little princess recited that spell. As long as, at that very moment, someone was thinking of her, she would be able to teleport to that person's side. But the girl never expected that she would be teleported to such a place. The magnificent decorations revealed the noble status of the room's owner. The little princess's heart rose to her throat as well. She mistakenly thought her magic had failed again. So she prepared to quietly slip away before the owner of the room woke up. But the person on the bed suddenly sat up. He pleaded painfully for the girl not to leave. Those affectionate eyes seemed to be looking at someone else through her. The little princess froze on the spot. That familiar white hair and those green eyes. Even though the two had never met, she knew. The person on the bed was her father. In an instant, all her grievances welled up in her chest. She never expected that the person who missed her most would actually be the father who had always ignored her. But what the emperor said next was like a bucket of cold water poured over the little princess's heart. The name the man called was her mother's, so it turned out to be nothing more than her own ridiculous wishful thinking. It seemed that her parents must have loved each other deeply back then, so her father must hate her, the one who had caused her mother's death. She only wanted to escape from the man's side as quickly as possible. In panic, she avoided her father's touch. Using the little magic she had left, she once again recited the teleportation spell. The emperor instinctively drew his sword. The little princess trembled all over in fright. She practically leaped into the spatial rift in a blind panic. Fortunately, this time she was finally teleported to her destination. Meanwhile, the crown prince also sensed the unusual fluctuation of magic. That familiar feeling made him certain that his sister had returned. He could not suppress the trembling of his hands, but in his heart, his emotions became even more tangled and complicated. At this moment, he had no idea how to face the younger sister he had wronged for 10 years. Was he supposed to admit that he was just a sensitive and selfish bastard, and that for the sake of an absurd prophecy, he had hurt the person who cared about him the most, and after doing so many wrong things, still shamelessly tell his sister that he actually loved her? How could he possibly say such words out loud? But in the end, he owed his sister an apology, even if his sister was unwilling to accept it, even if doing so would cause him to lose his status as crown prince. He still had to give that child an explanation. The man took the initiative to suggest going inside to sit for a while, and after speaking, ignored the maid's objections. He directly barged in. Loina bit her lip in hatred at the side, and the little princess could only reluctantly follow behind. Before long, 4 or 5 grown men had squeezed into the tiny reception room. As soon as the girl sat down, the 2 princes rushed to explain why they had come. The eldest prince asked worriedly where his sister had gone after disappearing, and the second prince anxiously said that they had searched for her very hard these past days. Both of their voices trembled with concern, as if they truly missed the sister they had regained after losing her. The burning emotion in their eyes did not seem fake, yet the little princess uneasily avoided their gazes. The scene of her brothers taking the initiative together to come find her was something she would not even dare dream of. If this had happened in the past, she would have been so happy she could not sleep. But now, her heart was left with only the stillness of dead water. Just as Riven had told her. Back then, she had worked so hard, only because she hoped her family would turn around and look at her once. Even if they gave her only 1/10 of the kindness they gave Lily, she would have treasured it and never let go. But now, she already knew which family members were truly worth giving herself to. The little princess looked straight into her brother's eyes, and the eldest prince was also startled by that resolute and indifferent gaze. The way his sister looked at him was already completely different. The expectation and gentleness she once had were gone. All that remained was coldness and calm. A panic unlike anything he had ever felt before made him regret it so much he could barely breathe. He regretted not cherishing that child who would be satisfied with just a pat on the head, that sister who, even while shivering from the cold, still wanted to leave the blanket for him. Thinking of this, the eldest prince still wanted to say something more. But then he saw blood suddenly seeping from the corner of Loina's mouth, and the little princess rushed over at once without a second thought. Once upon a time, his sister had cared about him in just this way too. Sadly, everything could never go back again. The eldest prince, who had once cruelly hurt his sister, finally regretted it. But the little princess now was unwilling even to call him brother anymore. Loina had only bitten her lip until it bled. Yet the little princess was so heartbroken she was almost in tears. But when facing the brothers who shared her blood, that child was as cold as a stranger. And in that instant, the eldest prince felt as if knives were twisting in his heart. But all of this was their own doing, for once this focused and passionate affection had also belonged to him. His well-behaved little sister would warm him on cold winter nights. She would use her frost-bitten little hands to tend his wounds. And after being cruelly hurt, she would still timidly call him brother. But he had personally destroyed all of it, and he did not even dare to remember. To remember those bastard words he had once said. It was he who had forbidden his sister to call him brother, and it was also he who had viciously warned her. If he absolutely had to choose one of the two, sister, he would choose Lily without the slightest hesitation. The more he thought about it, the more the man felt that he had utterly failed as a brother, and his sister's distant attitude also made him feel fear for the very first time. So the eldest prince suddenly stood up. He desperately wanted to prove that he still had a place in his sister's heart. "What should you call me?" The man's voice carried a choking sob, almost like a plea. But in the end, he still did not get the answer he wanted to hear. What his sister called him was Your Royal Highness the Crown Prince. This was clearly the form of address he had once personally demanded. But now, hearing it in his ears, it was more mocking than the most vicious curse. Yet, even so, the man was still unwilling to give up. He deceived himself by saying that they were family bound by blood, that he wanted to hear his sister. But the little princess lowered her head uneasily. The hurt from the past had long since been carved into her bones, and she had long since ceased to be that child who would endure beatings and scolding for just a little bit of candy. She was afraid that everything before her was only a trap, that as soon as she took the bait, her brother would warn her again, like last time, not to indulge in wishful thinking. In the end, the little princess still chose to close off her heart, and the eldest prince was still unable to hear that long-lost word, brother. He was like a defeated rooster. He left his sister's residence in desolation. But the moment he stepped outside, the man painfully clutched his chest. A guard asked him whether he wanted a physician summoned, but the eldest prince merely trembled as he waved his hand. So this was the unbearable agony of having one's sincere heart trampled into the mud. Now, he had finally felt the heartbreak his sister had once suffered. Yet he did not know when that child would ever forgive him. The high priest had already learned that the princes had all gone to their sister's sleeping quarters. If this continued, the matter of him and the head maid embezzling public funds would be exposed. So an even more evil plan came into being. Meanwhile, the head maid had already hurried to the high priest's temple. She tried hard to maintain calm on the surface, but her trembling hands had already betrayed her. Indeed, it was this woman who had secretly embezzled the money. But all of this had been carried out so brazenly only because of the high priest's instructions. She had thought that everything could be done without anyone noticing, but she had not expected that these past few days, the princes would actually begin to care about that unfavored little harbinger of disaster. This time, The head maid was completely flustered. That was why she lowered herself and ran to the temple for help. Unfortunately, the high priest had never intended to help her at all. This greedy woman was nothing more than a tool used to abuse the little princess. Now that the embezzlement plan had been exposed, someone had to come forward as the scapegoat, and right now he had something even more important to do. It would soon be the annual sacred ceremony. He had to add even more fuel to the public opinion surrounding Princess Lily. As long as the people always believed that the black-haired Tailodi was the symbol of disaster, that person would never have any chance of turning things around. Thinking of this, the high priest in the corner revealed a sinister smile. "You came to me of your own accord." His hand slowly brushed across the rows of forbidden black magic books on the shelf, and an even more insane plan emerged as well. Back then, it was with this same method that he had taken away Tailodi's identity. A fake imperial princess created through alchemy had replaced the true princess who symbolized light. This time, he would surely succeed as well. The dim and murky light fell upon the high priest's twisted face. At this very moment, inside the Emperor's council chamber, the man seated in the place of honor was frowning unhappily. Ever since seeing his daughter that night, he had been restless and distracted. That child had actually used the long-lost magic of space, and he also could never forget those eyes that shone like stars. She really looked far too much like her mother. But the more this was true, the less he could accept his daughter's existence. It was the Empress who had first betrayed their love, so his ignoring that child seemed somewhat understandable as well. The Emperor stubbornly suppressed his guilt toward his daughter, and instead coldly questioned the eldest prince before the hall, asking why he had disobeyed his orders and secretly gone to the Empress's palace. Seeing his father suddenly enraged, the eldest prince did not want to defend himself. In his mind flashed the image of his little sister taking care of him. That kind child should not be treated as a dark harbinger of disaster hated by everyone. She should have been a princess treasured in the palm of one's hand and carefully protected. For the first time in his life, the eldest prince talked back to his father. He told the emperor that his sister was not some ominous harbinger of disaster at all. She was just an ordinary child. But the man on the main seat suddenly laughed. From beginning to end, he had never believed in any prophecy about a harbinger of disaster. He had even ordered nearly 90% of the empire's temples demolished when the high priest prophesied the birth of a child of calamity. But how could a child capable of using teleportation magic be ordinary? This time, it was the eldest prince who was stunned. His sister had used spatial magic, which meant that during the days she had disappeared, she had truly left. Then why had she not told him? In an instant, a powerful unease surged into the eldest prince's heart. His sister did not trust him, or rather, no longer regarded him as her brother. At that moment, the man smiled bitterly. Was this not exactly what he had brought upon himself? He had only just now learned that his sister could use magic. So how could he still have the face to hope for that child's forgiveness? Thinking of this, the eldest prince reported everything he had seen and heard over the past few days to the emperor in complete detail, including the dilapidated state of the empress's palace. At this, the emperor was utterly enraged, and at the same time, endless regret churned in his heart. No matter how much he resented her, she was still his daughter. He immediately ordered that the little princess be invited over. The emperor had always thought that the little princess was living well, so he had favored his other daughter with a clear conscience. He had even poured all the guilt he felt toward little Tailodi into Lily, because in his eyes, money was enough to make up for missing paternal love. But what he did not know was that within the inner palace, what kind of situation an unfavored child would face. No one was willing to take care of a disgraced imperial princess, let alone one who was a harbinger of disaster said to bring misfortune. So the maids assigned to her were replaced one after another, until in the end, only Loina remained. And the head maid even took the opportunity to seize the little princess's allowance. From then on, this child, who should have had a life free of want, lived a life worse than that of the servants. And in the blink of an eye, such days lasted for 10 years. 10 years was enough to wear away a child's longing for her family. And by the time the emperor learned the truth, everything was already too late. The little princess now felt only unfamiliarity and fear toward her father. So when the knight placed the emperor's invitation into her hands, the girl's face instantly turned deathly pale. She vaguely remembered that on that night, her father had drawn the sword at his waist. So, was this to sentence her to death for trespassing into the imperial palace at night? Or would he, like her brother, viciously humiliate her, and then mock her with the cruelest words for never being able to compare to Lily? At that moment, the little princess shrank back. Even though she had long prepared herself for not being loved, she still did not want to face such cruel hurt. So the little princess stammered as she searched for an excuse to refuse. And when Loina saw this, her heart ached so badly she could hardly breathe. Her little princess seemed very afraid of the outside world, but that was only natural, for some people's existence simply did not deserve to be called family. Even if they regretted it and wanted to apologize, they were not worthy of being forgiven at all. Unfortunately, the emperor's invitation was something they could not refuse. But the little princess suddenly said that her stomach hurt, seeing her miserably clutch her belly with her little hand. Lowena's heart tightened at once, only where the maid could not see. A trace of guilt flashed through the little princess's eyes. This was the first time she had lied to Lowena. But if she did not do this, she might really die. And what she had not expected even more was that after learning she was sick, the emperor actually sent over a large pile of healing potions. There were so many bottles that she could not use them all up in an entire year. But little Taelodi did not feel the slightest bit of joy. Perhaps her father's concern was only a passing whim, yet she had still completely underestimated a father's determination to see his daughter. For the next 5 days in a row, she received invitations from the emperor. It seemed that she would have to find a time to meet that person after all.